isn't so much. Growing up in a vacuum can be tough. When is it appropriate to slap girls on the butt? What Mr. Evans wants, Mr. Evans gets. Codename Charlie XR, Charlie XR, Charlie XR, Charlie X.
Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, I have a question for you.
What?
Are you a girl?
That's a girl.
Oh, we are going to talk about one of our favorite episodes of the original series. It was so much fun watching it with a group of friends, wasn't it?
We had a blast.
Alright, so let's listen in on some of their comments before we dive deep into this episode. Charlie X. Okay, we're going around the room now. I am Nayar and Charlie X. I absolutely love this episode. I would watch this and rewatch this with my brother and my friend Dave, and it holds up, I think, even better now in modern times than it did decades ago. I mean, it's a timeless classic episode.
Hi, this is Kavora. And so, we're watching it here with a group of people, mostly guys, and I didn't realize that it was so funny, but everybody was just laughing during a lot of it.
This is Jermaine. Yeah, it was a pretty funny episode, especially the tension between Charlie and the young lady. What's her name? I forget her name.
Janice
Rand. Yeah. He wanted her bad, man. If I was, 17 and I had those kind of powers, I mean, there might have been some celebrities that would have just fallen under my will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm Ken. So, I do not remember the episode being that funny. I think watching it in a group enhances that effect. There were definitely some cheeseball moments, as there is throughout the original series. But it was a good story. I don't think I have nearly as much to say about it as the other people do, though.
I'm Galen, and Twilight Zone episode when they came out with the no face. And there was another episode, too, where the people had no face. And they may have drawn from that. And that smile did make me convinced that Spock loves Uhura.
Well, I'm Joseph. I have to say that here Charlie does so many things that would warrant a Picard facepalm.
Hi, I'm Vicky. I think that if we wanted to have a drinking game and use this episode, every time they say the word Charlie. And also when he slapped Yeoman Rand on the buttocks, that was interesting because this is supposed to be in the future, and everybody's so busy now being equal, but they were separate and equal.
I'm Derek. I first saw this episode when I was 12 years old, and I thought the character of Charlie was very annoying. Watching it now at 48 years old, I could appreciate more of the challenges of when you have someone that's not socially well adjusted, what do? It could be you're dealing with somebody with some mental imbalance or just a general lack of maturity and trying to get them into society where they'll behave properly. So I appreciate the deeper themes. Grace Lee Whitney, who played Janice Rand, I thought this was one of her best episodes that she was in for the whole series. I appreciate the episode more now. I really enjoyed it.
All right, my little Georgia Peach, do you want to read Alan Ashman's commentary from the Star Trek Compendium?
Charlie X, writer D.C. Fontana, story by Gene Roddenberry, director Lawrence Dobkin. Stardate 1533.6. The cargo ship Antares docks with the Enterprise to deliver young Charlie Evans, the lone survivor of a crash on the planet Thasus 14 years before. The personnel of the Antares, Captain Ramart and Tom Nellis, seem unusually eager to leave, and when the Antares is destroyed, suspicion falls on Charlie. Aboard the Enterprise, Charlie begins to work miracles. At first, these are harmless pranks, kept in check by Kirk, whom Charlie comes to regard as a father figure. But when Yeoman Rand spurns his advances, she is erased from existence by the youngster. Various other ship personnel are victimized, and in his eagerness to arrive at Colony Alpha 5, Charlie assumes control of the Enterprise. In an attempt to tax Charlie's control abilities, Kirk switches on the ship's interior systems to their fullest extent. Then a shimmering alien face materializes on the Enterprise bridge and identifies himself as a Thasian, come to take Charlie back. Despite Charlie's pleas, he vanishes along with the alien, doomed to spend the rest of his life alone on the bleak planet Thasus.
Well, there was a lot to this episode. We saw it with a group of friends this time around, and there was a lot of laughs. I mean, it was humorous at so many points, but it also was reminiscent of other stories.
Like Twilight Zone, maybe?
It was so much like Twilight Zone. I mean, It's a Good Life, written by Jerome Bixby, and that came out in 1961.
Yeah. Right, and very similar. And I think they kind of knew that, and they just wanted to do a different take on it, because in this one the child was a teenager, and so they dealt more with issues of romance as well.
Yes. So when you first saw this when you were younger, do you have any fond memories of it?
I just remember thinking that parts of it were scary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Charlie making the woman faceless.
That was the big scary part for you?
It was. It was like, I mean, what would you do if you can't see or breathe or anything?
And you remember the Twilight Zone movie, they actually used that for the It's a Good Life segment. So it was Twilight Zone going back to Star Trek, which was used by Twilight Zone. You know, everything is a cycle.
Yes, that's true.
I remember seeing this when I was younger, and me and my brother and my buddy Dave, we thought this was such a fantastic episode. And when we were watching it as a group, every man just could not stop laughing, because we were all at that point in our lives at some time that we wanted to touch a girl. And many of us did, and we had that extremely uncomfortable talk with our fathers.
So that was something you related to.
Oh my God, it was so horrible. Yeah, it was. What a great episode. The actor that was Charlie, he was actually older than 17. He played a 17-year-old in the show, but Robert Walker Jr. was a method actor, and he didn't leave his dressing room to interact with anyone else in the cast because he wanted not to be familiar with them. He wanted to be strange.
Yes, to play the part better, so that they wouldn't know anything about him, just the way they had to figure out what Charlie was. But actually, what happened was he did finally interact with the cast on the last day of filming, because he knew it was the last day, and then they all found out what a great guy he was. And I know I read that Grace Lee Whitney, who played Janice Rand, I mean, she just thought he was a wonderful actor, and that he was very professional, and she just thought it was just great to see him in this part.
Yeah, they were going to call it The Godchild. They had a whole series of names that they were going to call the show, Charlie's Law, and they felt that the network censors wouldn't allow it. And so they leaned on Charlie X. X means the unknown.
I think that, another working title was How Charlie Became a God.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't want to use that because it almost tells what happens in the episode. So with Charlie X, it's a little more vague and you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who Charlie is.
Yes. This is early on in the series, saw a lot of character development with Uhura and her amazing singing talent.
Yeah, you know what's funny is because I know I heard someone say that they didn't think Uhura was a very good singer, and I don't know why they would say that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, the part with Uhura singing and the way she got Spock to smile when she was singing about Spock, and that's where J.J. Abrams got the idea of Uhura and Spock having a romance.
Mm-hmm. And it made sense. This is early in the development of Spock, so they let him smile a little bit. They let it slide, his being very stoic. I love that scene. I thought it was fantastic. Originally, she was supposed to be a mime entertaining the crew, but because she was such a wonderful singer, they let her show off those talents instead.
Yes, because Nichelle Nichols had already been a professional singer, so she was great. And it was great to use her in that role and use that talent.
This is the only time Gene Roddenberry makes an appearance on the show. Not a physical appearance, but we hear his voice over the loudspeaker speaking about how turkey is being made.
Yeah, Gene Roddenberry was actually the voice of the chef in this one.
Again, early on, they didn't think of having replicators, so it was assumed that there was a kitchen on the Enterprise. Also, that there would be a gift shop. Do you remember Janice Rand mentions that?
Yeah, because Charlie gave her her favorite perfume, and she said, "Where did you get this?" And it's not in any of the ship's stores. And I don't know if they ever mention ship stores again.
They don't.
And that also made me wonder, like, was Charlie a mind reader? I don't think he was, because he could have been even more powerful then. So he must have found out about her favorite perfume by asking someone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. A lot of unknowns here. But that's why he's Charlie X, the unknown.
And also about the turkeys. They thought this episode would air around Thanksgiving, but then it turned out it aired like 2 months earlier because this episode was ready while another episode wasn't ready, so they went ahead and aired this one ahead of time. But this was also the only time that Thanksgiving was mentioned on Star Trek.
Mm-hmm. And USPA. Kirk mentions USPA. They did not develop the term the United Federation of Planets, but this episode does mention the United Earth Space Probe Agency. So
yes.
Captain Kirk called it USPA. And it was later on used on the TV series Star Trek Enterprise for one of the Federation's precursor agencies.
That is interesting. Yes, so they hadn't settled on a name for the organization yet.
And I like the fact that Enterprise picked up on that piece of trivia and applied it further in canon.
Star Trek Trivia.
Question number 1. What card does Charlie materialize inside Yeoman Rand's dress? Question number 2. For Spock, where is the tiger burning bright? And this was also maybe the first writing effort by Dorothy Fontana.
So there was some influence from Robert Heinlein and Jerome Bixby about someone who had ultimate power like this, but she took that and put such a unique Star Trek twist on it. Later on, she got very more involved in Star Trek, not just on the writing capacity, but any time that I see her write something, I'm excited because it's always awesome.
She really impressed them with her writing skills this time, so they let her write more.
George Takei was not in this episode, but they took lines from The Man Trap and they dubbed it for his speaking over the loudspeaker, which is pretty smart.
Yes.
What'd you think about another episode with William Shatner bearing his chest?
Oh yeah, actually, and that was neat too. The whole scene in the gym I liked. It started with the women doing gymnastics. That was cute. I loved seeing that. And as for William Shatner, I mean, yeah, seeing him shirtless is always great.
And he shaved his chest for this episode.
And also, I read that he really didn't want to do the shirtless scene. They had talked about letting him wear a shirt, and he actually knew that he had kind of gained a little weight before this episode, so he didn't want to do it shirtless, but they said, you can do it. So they, so he did. I didn't mind, no.
Okay, now we watched it on a 70-inch television, also the Blu-ray version, so it was high definition. And one thing that was very noticeable was Kirk's junk in the gym scene.
So that
what was up with that?
Well, something they got away with back then, but of course they do that now too.
But you probably couldn't see it at the time so much. This was like so in your face.
Oh, okay. You're saying like because now the TV screens are bigger and the high definition.
The definition is so much more noticeable now because we were all laughing at saying like, "What is up with that? He's not wearing a dancer's belt or anything."
But it was also neat the way they're red. With Kirk and the other guy, Sam Ellis, I think, the red tights and the way their black boots were attached to it, it looked like it was one piece.
Yeah.
And so we had Charlie just being this omnipotent child, and he was also creepy, wasn't he? He wasn't just,
Oh, he was beyond, okay,
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Twilight Zone episode with
in
kid
Twilight
wishing
Zone,
him in the cornfield, right? The kid wasn't...
That kid was creepy too,
He was creepy in a different way, right?
Yes.
Whereas Charlie Evans was like a stalker. I mean, it was so uncomfortable, him constantly going after Janice Rand. They're like, what is up? Lay off it, dude. She doesn't want you.
But still, that he's a teenage boy, and you can understand why he's doing it, because it is what we see teenage boys doing. If it's a girl they like, they don't get a clue. They still keep following her around.
Oh, I admitted it. If we went to the same school together, I would pull your hair.
Yeah, I know. And
Star Trek Trivia.
Question number 1. What card does Charlie materialize inside Yeoman Rand's dress? Answer, the Ace of Clubs. Question number 2. For Spock, where is the tiger burning bright? Answer, in the forest of the night.
Okay, and it's interesting because when I was younger, we would recite this line over and over and over again. And we thought it was something unique to Star Trek, but it's not. So when Spock goes into that trance that Charlie puts him in, he says, once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary. That line, that was from The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Initially, I didn't realize that.
Right.
And then Tiger, Tiger Burning Bright, that is from William Blake, The Tiger.
That is interesting. So do you think Charlie took that from, probably not from Spock's mind, it was probably something that Charlie read.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's something that Charlie knew. Severe amount of colored lights in the corridors. Various avenues of brilliance, bright reds, brilliant yellows, blues, because we know that RCA had a say in making sure the show was very colorful. And it was. Like you mentioned, the red tights. They were purposely going for bold primary colors. Within time, we would see this die down a little bit because it actually took them much more time to put this many colors in the show.
I actually liked when Janice Rand put on the pink outfit. I mean, I guess that was another way to make her more enticing, but it was nice to see what some of their casual wear looks like.
Oh yeah, anytime you see the crew's quarters or their casual wear, it just adds more to their characters. And it's interesting that they were able to use the old tunics that were left over from the pilot episodes. So when we see the crew members of the Antares, that's what they're wearing, minus the Enterprise insignias.
And in the synopsis that I read at the beginning, it said that Charlie, the end of it would be Charlie left alone on the planet Thasus. He wouldn't really be alone, right? He would just be with beings that he couldn't touch, which is still horrible to him.
Yes. I mean, it was a fantastic episode, so we have to ask ourselves, when we look at it, does it fit into the rest of Star Trek canon? And, well, it doesn't break canon in any way. And we see that even with the little tidbits that Enterprise series was able to pull from it, it ties it into canon even more so.
Yes, I think it fit very well. I mean, it's too bad they couldn't have a sequel and, maybe someday find out that Charlie actually could be rescued or something. And the part, again, with Spock playing the Vulcan lute and smiling, I mean, that happens again. He it's like he's happy when he's playing his music. And, in The Way to Eden, when he was playing it, he looked very happy there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, we're seeing some ties and the cohesive universe that Star Trek has created. It really does fit in. This episode fits in with the rest of it very well. Overall, the original series is just fantastic for having fluidity. I mean, there's always going to be some hiccups here and there. There was a weird scene where Kirk got on the turbo lift with one shirt and got off with another shirt. It's kind of funny when you see these faux pas. But as far as the story-wise, this is top of my list. I love this episode.
It's definitely up there as one of the best.
Okay, let's talk about the adaptation by James Blish.
Do we have to?
Of course.
I mean, the Blish adaptations don't usually live up to the episode.
It's one of the funny things is that because there are so many stories crammed into a book, they tend to slice down some of the material or condense it. This was found in Star Trek 1, because they're all numbered, and it's actually the first story in there, and it's entitled Charlie's Law. What'd you think about the adaptation?
It was okay. It's still, like all the others, it kind of has things running together. But this one actually, it had some details that were different.
Let's talk about those details.
So in this book, it was McCoy that hit Charlie on the rump. I mean, why do they do that? Yeah, I guess in the story, they didn't want to add another character to do it.
Yeah.
To do it, to demonstrate to Charlie, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And the book had, there was a scene where it said Charlie cried, which didn't happen on the show.
Yeah. And we know that these books are based off of some early scripts, which is always good looking at these James Blish novels because we're able to see some of the things that the show could have had, such as Charlie crying.
I know another thing was, at the end when Charlie was taken away by the Thasians, and this book said that Janice Rand was crying like she lost a son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she would have really felt that way.
No, that was very unique in that she was so sympathetic to him in the book.
Yeah, on the episode, and that was another thing about how she got tough with him and just said, Charlie, no, you have to learn to respect people. And I like how that was on the show. And they left out the tiger burning bright.
And that's one of my favorite parts in the show. I love that whole scene on the bridge when he's taking over everyone.
It was a good demonstration of his power. And that was something that was verbal that it seems like it could have been in the story. Even though you wouldn't get the effect of the way Spock said it, the way he was doing it fast and kind of like he was in pain. And this was a bottle episode. It all took place on the ship. The network actually asked for another planet episode, but Gene Roddenberry felt like it would be a lot more scary if the crew had to stay on the ship because that way they couldn't get away from Charlie. So that is something that was reflected in the Blish adaptation. It was all on the ship.
It was an enjoyable read.
It was okay. I mean, not as good as watching the episode.
Not at all. This is pure visual enjoyment, watching Charlie and his antics and seeing other people's responses to him.
What Mr. Evans wants, Mr. Evans gets. Coming, Charlie XL, Charlie XL, Charlie XL, Charlie X, Charlie XL, Charlie XL, Charlie XL, Charlie X.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.